Welcome everybody. I see a few people on this call as I've been seeing them all day today. So welcome and thank you for joining. Um, I am happy to introduce Nick Trudgen. I don't think I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Nick. Oh, your last name rather.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, Trudgen. That's
Oh,
fine.
okay. Thank God. To introduce Space Market, I had the pleasure of taking a look at what Space Market has been up to, I think a month or so ago. Thank you for that demo. Space Market is Space Market is building a financial service platform to be able to trade space-based commodities. So think power from companies like Starcatcher or data bandwidth or spectrum, as well as in-orbit services. So what I'm going to do is introduce Nick, or at least turn it over to Nick, allow him to introduce himself, Space Market, and then he'll give us a demo of what this platform looks like as well. All right, Nick, take it away.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Quadri. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right, hi guys. My name's Nick. I'm the CEO of Space Markets. Basically, what we're trying to do is fill the gap that we see in the space economy for financial trading platforms. So if you look at most other or nearly every other industry, there are venues where you can trade the services or commodities produced by that industry. So think CME, LME, etc. So yeah, you can check out the company. It's spacemarkets.com. This is the new website that we're working on, and I'll give you a demo now of the new website and also the trading platform and the protocol. So we've built this with Coinbase Ventures, who are our lead investor, and the idea is to create a programmable, continuous market for space assets that links the unique element of space to a tradable asset. So this is the website. These are some of the assets we're trading. So we're going after really what we've seen as the 8 key space commodities at the moment. So spectrum and bandwidth, imagery, storage compute, space-based solar power, lunar resources, orbital stations, in-orbit refueling, and space debris. So now I'll show you, for example, how spectrum works just a little bit. So if you look here, let's open spectrum. It shows you some of the companies at the bottom here that are actually using spectrum, which is obviously most space companies. It's probably the most important commodity now in space. And then if you go back here, imagery. No, that's not working. Okay, yeah, here we go. So compute. So you guys have probably heard a lot about StarCloud and NVIDIA and obviously XAI doing in-orbit compute and storage. That's going to be a huge market. So we built our platform really to provide services and tradable compute products on our platform. And I'll show you now quickly how the actual trading platform looks. So this is, think of it as a Bloomberg terminal for space. So it's we're going for sort of institutional type look. So I think one of the main challenges with combining space technology and fintech is that they are two very different worlds. Space is obviously very much government oriented and quite traditional, and then on the other hand, fintech and blockchain is a bit more open source and a bit more different world. So we're trying to bridge the divide and make our platform accessible to both sides of the market. So if you look here quickly on the left, we have some of the off-planet categories. So I mentioned before, spectrum, imaging, compute, storage, relay, fuel. And then here we have some of the regions, so LEO, GEO, Lunar. We'll probably also have here cislunar. And then we'll probably have Mars as well, because obviously Mars is one of the long-term goals of humanity. And then bottom left here, we have the next phase of the platform, which is derivatives and futures. So this is obviously going to be a huge part of the business going forward, is allowing companies that are maybe building its space infrastructure, and they need to potentially sell future capacity, they can do that on our platform using futures contracts and derivatives. But at the moment, the platform is mainly a spot market for real-time delivery of the asset. So if you look here, there are a couple of examples of the contracts we'll have on our platform. So K-band spectrum, orbital compute, and then propellant storage. I think like orbit fab and in space refueling, which is a growing part of the space economy. So here you have some of the order book, the amount, the price, the time, and then some of the trades taking place in real time in the market. And then here you have the futures, contracts, etc., and then the order book. So this is the front end. This is really what the traders will see. This is what the users will see. And now I'll show you the back end of the platform. So this is the space markets protocol. So this is a decentralized protocol that we built with Coinbase, and it's actually designed from the ground up to create the whole economic system for space. So obviously space is a unique environment in terms of the physics and the assets and the location and everything. So we need to really think quite deeply about how we can build the whole economic layer for space assets. And I'll give you now a quick demo of how it works. So if you look here at the bottom, it's built on the base blockchain, which is the native Coinbase blockchain. So we think that's a good idea because it ties us in straight away with credible and institutional finance and investors in the Coinbase sphere. And then here, if you look at the top, it explains the 5 smart contracts that we have on the platform. And just to be clear, this is a decentralized protocol, so it's not centralized. So those of you who are involved in fintech will understand that this is open source. So it's not the protocol itself runs peer-to-peer. It's not owned by any one company, and therefore it allows any space infrastructure, any satellite to run the software and then benefit from the trading engine without being tied in with any one company. So here there are 5 smart contracts that make up the whole protocol. So the first one, you've got the asset registry, which manages the asset types, the metadata, and the ownership of the asset. The next one is the ERC20, which allows for fractional ownership of tokens and voting. The third one is the metadata storage, which allows you to store all the metadata and validate the information on chain and verify the data with hashing. And then you also have the auction smart contract, which allows for real-time offer and bids and matching of the best deal between the two parties. And then finally, the lease factory that creates the cryptographic lease with the embedded terms into the smart contract. So what I'll do now is I'll show you an example of this and how it works with different space assets. So if you look at the top here, you have some of the examples. So comms and imaging, orbital compute, space stations, data relay, transportation, and we'll also have here soon probably one for space-based solar power and also lunar resources. So let's choose, for example, compute. So you create the asset. And it's interesting to note here as well that because this protocol is decentralized, it's actually built for machine-to-machine transactions. So going forward, probably the space economy and trading in space won't be done by humans. It will be done by autonomous machines in space. And this protocol allows those machines to actually transact themselves without human involvement. So let's choose auto compute, and here it shows the schema and the metadata of that particular asset. So GPU, flops, power, GB, etc. So here you define and you list the actual metadata that's going to be stored as part of the contract. and this is all verifiable on chain. And the key thing with this, it makes it interesting, if people who know about commodities know that it's to create a space commodity, you must create a standardized contract, and this allows us to standardize certain space assets and allows them to be commoditized as a standardized asset. So this is basically building the financial primitive, and is a building blocks for allowing us to work on things like price comparison, price discovery, things like that. Because obviously one of the big challenges of the space sector really is there's no venue for price discovery. You can't really understand the value of assets in the market. And the second part here is registering the asset. So here, if you look in the middle, we've divided a all compute satellite into 1 million units or 1 million tokens. So what happens here is it allows us to basically divide ownership of that satellite and its revenue and its yield into 1 million units. And the value of this is that we can then have fractional ownership of that asset. And the interesting thing as well is it allows us to do secondary trading. So you could take the yield or the revenue of that satellite, and then you can trade it on secondary markets in, for example, other exchanges, whether it be centralized exchanges or decentralized exchanges. And then one of the things we're working on here, which is quite interesting, is we have a partnership with, I won't mention the name, but one of the world's biggest market makers who trade every asset on planet Earth. And we're working with them now to create a space product that can be traded. And we believe that will be a very big revenue generator for the space industry, is connecting space assets with market makers and new liquidity. Okay, the next part is here. So once you've created the asset, once you've registered it on the blockchain on Base, the protocol then verifies the data and the metadata to make sure the satellite in space data matches the data on chain to confirm integrity. This is then all hashed onto the blockchain. It's all mathematically verified. So you don't need to think about lawyers maybe or accountants or things like that. So it's all cryptographically stored on chain. And don't forget as well that these on chain methods are now being used by most banks, the government, for recording things like US treasuries, bonds, yields. So this is it's becoming a very common practice now to use this technology for financial transactions. So this also allows us to avoid things like fraud, misrepresentation, and allows us to make sure we follow KYC and AML best practices. So once you verify the data, you then allow the person or the company that owns the asset to create the lease or create the offer on the market. So here it allows, let's take a company, say it's doing in-orbit compute. They can define the price of what they're offering, the duration, say the number of days, the escrow requirements, and then they can list it here on a real-time marketplace that operates in orbit. And then, so what this does again is it standardizes the data into market primitives that allows us to, once we have enough volume on the market, this will allow us to have dynamic pricing, and we'll be able to see in real time what's available in the market. And instead of negotiating contracts with lawyers and emails and humans, we'll be able to create a programmable real-time market. Now here we have the bids. So this is where the person who wants to access the service can make a bid on the auction. Think of a common auction. You have a bid and a seller. So here the bid sets out what they're looking for in terms of the the duration, the time, location, the payment, the things like that. And again, this solves the same problems before. It's all it removes friction from the whole process, enables price discovery that happens in every other industry except space. So and here, once the bid is made, it's cryptographically signed and put on chain. Then here you have the acceptance of the bid. So here the person with the asset or the company with the asset can see in real time all the bids that have been made for say in-orbit compute. It can choose the winning bid based on price, time, availability, etc. This then creates a dual EIP signature that locks them both together. The lease factory verifies both parties, and then this helps to again prevent fraud. And we think it's extremely valuable because you're going to have in the future huge amount of space. There's exponential growth in the space economy, and it's not possible for this process to be done manually anymore, especially in the next 10 years. So yeah, so this will create instant enforceability, and once the parties are signed here, you don't need lawyers and there's no delays. Here you mint the NFT, so the NFT becomes a digital certificate. So this is enforceable in law, and again, this is used now by all major banks around the world. This sort of process for putting assets on chain and hashing them with digital certificates. So here, this lease now that it's a digital certificate, this can then be traded and can be portable and can be used as leverage in other financial transactions. So you can maybe take this and deposit it in a fund or in a decentralized finance system, or you could use it as collateral for a loan. So there's many things now that this system allows us to work on that doesn't exist until now. And then this is the interesting part now, which is the payment protocol. So those of you who are familiar with fintech and AI agents will know about X402 protocol. So this is the machine-to-machine payment layer being developed by Coinbase for the AI agent economy. So of course, AI agents will need to make microsecond payments, and this protocol allows for that. So it developed out of the HTTP protocol, and it's now being developed by Coinbase. And what it does for us is it allows us to build a system for space infrastructure that you only pay for what you need. So you don't need to rely on long-term contracts or bulk contracts, or you can have a service and receive real-time streaming payments using X402, which we think is very, very valuable. And it also helps with AI agents. So if you think in the future of the space economy and the way things are going with AI agents, there's going to be a proliferation of growth of AI agents trading in space, and they'll be using this protocol. They won't be using anything else. And this protocol actually uses stable coins. So we're using USDC, which is the Circle stablecoin. So again, the USDC has a huge market cap. It's backed by the US dollar, and so yeah, that could become the currency of space, the USDC. Now we'll look at how the streaming protocol works. So look here, just a little map of some assets. So you've got, say, a space orbital compute satellite and a ground station. You have an investor, and they will then stream per second stablecoin payments depending on usage. And at the moment, that doesn't happen. This is all done, manually in US dollars, and the process is not particularly efficient. So here we're using obviously the Coinbase as a facilitator, all KYC, AML, and I think the business value of this is it not only allows real-time payments, but it replaces invoices, replaces monthly invoices, and you can track real-time cash flow, and you can trust the verification and of those transactions in real time. You only pay for what you use. And this is another interesting part here, which is the revenue distribution. So the idea is that going forward, satellites and space infrastructure and space stations, etc., will have many owners, potentially millions of owners for each satellite. And here you can have an on-chain verified system that checkpoints the ownership and distribution of the yield and the revenue from those satellites back to the investors. So one investor could be a country, a space agency, another one could be a fund. You could have retail, you could have different types of investors, and those revenue flows are tracked automatically from the source to the wallet in real time. So again, what this enables liquidity in the market and yield, and allows us to bring in market makers and new financial traders into the space sector. This just shows a little bit about some of the proportionate ownership and how it works. Again, all in USDC stablecoin, which is backed by the dollar. And then the last part is just a summary of the protocol. So it covers the whole life cycle of the space economy. So asset registry, lease, execution, streaming payments, and then revenue distribution using USDC. And then what you've just seen here is the tokenization of the asset, the auction, the buy and sell, and the marketplace, leasing the digital certificate as a immutable legal contract, per second streaming using X402, and then automatic revenue distribution to the token holders. And just quickly why this matters: no intermediaries. So we can potentially remove some lawyers from the equation, which would be, I think, is always a good idea. It allows for trustless matching of the asset of the buyer and the seller. Escrow, so the platform covers escrow, settlement. The protocol replaces brokers, billing systems, and payment processors. So all those people doing that job might have to go and do something, start a new company and do something more useful. And then it allows for real-time economics. So you only pay for what you use, which is very important. And then the last part, composable ownership. So fractional ownership, tradable certificates, and with a long-term goal really of creating a liquid space market that is open to everybody. Yeah, that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Nick. I wanted to, after the presentation, kind of step out and give some of the people on the call, as well as the rest of our users, or viewers rather, sorry, context as to why a space market and why now.
Yeah. Shall I answer this?
I'm sorry?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah. If you can, why is it needed now? Why is it something that's never existed before? And why now in the industry, as the trajectory of the industry kind of grows right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it hasn't. I think it hasn't existed before because the space sector has just been dominated by the government and by a certain type of engineering person, which has also been crucial to build all the great things we see in the space economy, all the hardware, all the ground stations, even all the things now with space solar power and space stations and compute. This is all being built by engineers, but until now there hasn't really been much involvement in the space sector from maybe the finance community or business people. And if you go to a space conference, like last week I was in Space Symposium in Colorado, it's still mainly the same space community from like the last 20 years. And so we think that's probably the reason why no one from finance has really tried to solve this problem. And then why now is important, because I think that we're seeing now exponential growth of the space economy, and really the only interesting financial news is the SpaceX IPO. So it's like, if you look online, some investors have exposure and access to SpaceX through secondary markets or through the IPO. There are some listed space companies on the Nasdaq, I think like Voyager and some other ones. So really the only way that investors or traders have to access the space economy now is through IPOs, public equities, and that's it. And even if you look at VCs, there aren't many space VCs. So also it can be a challenge for a lot of companies to build their products that's capital intensive, and they have to rely on VCs, which has its own challenges. So I think like a platform like this, will allow space companies to monetize their products and their revenue, and then not rely so much on the government and not rely so much on VCs.
Okay, we have a few questions in the chat right now, and I didn't mention this before, but if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer them. But we have two right now in the chat. The first being, what kind of regulatory rules do you expect?
Yeah, that's a very important question. That's the most important issue, and I think we can divide that into two parts. The first part is the financial regulation and trading, and the second part is if you like, the FCC or space regulation. So on the first part, we're in the UK FCA sandbox in London to test trading securities and commodities in the UK, and we've started the process in the US to be regulated with the CFTC, with the designated contract market. So the goal is long term to be a regulated space commodities platform, and that obviously requires a certain amount of investment, a certain amount of education, because space commodities is something new for the CFTC. But we're doing something good for humanity. We're doing something that's positive for planet Earth, and I think the people at the CFTC appreciate that and will support us. And then on the space regulation side, I think the biggest challenge is around satellite spectrum. So if you look at one of our verticals is spectrum, that's obviously heavily regulated by the FCC and ITU. So we've tried to solve this problem by working with satellite companies who want to trade their spectrum, and as long as the trade complies with the initial filing with the FCC, then it's okay. The challenge comes if you're building futures contracts based on spectrum, and we're trying to explore those challenges at the moment.
Okay, Ivan, did that answer your question, by any chance?
Yes, it did. It sounds like there's a bit of a ways to go, would you say? How far do you think you have to go to get that sort of accreditation?
I didn't quite catch that, Ivan.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I say, how far do you think you have to get that full accreditation? Is it a ways to go, do you think? Or would you want to put a time to it, in years or months?
Accreditation with the CFTC?
Yes.
I think realistically it would be 1 year.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
You have to be a sophisticated investor to invest with your platform.
It depends on the asset. It depends on the asset and the regulations related to that asset. But I'd always suggest having a certain level of education and knowledge of the space industry before using our platform.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. That's definitely wise.
Yeah.
Do you see anyone like commoditizing it, like putting in, making a fund of assets? Do you see that kind of a thing happening?
Yeah, for sure. That's without question, that's one of the use cases. So I was in Space Symposium last week in Colorado, and we had a lot of discussions with both companies building space infrastructure and then investors who are interested in funding it using our platform. And of course, one of the use cases would be, we set up an SPV. The company can then list its satellite hardware ownership of either the actual satellite or of the revenue, and then we can allow investors to come in and invest in that through our platform.
Do you see like they perhaps, I'm sorry for asking so many questions, but do you see perhaps like there being perhaps an insurance pool or any kind of launch probability market that would open up?
Yeah, so at the moment we haven't really included insurance pools at all, but we've had some discussions recently about this, because there are some companies that I know and some friends of mine in the US working on space insurance, and yeah, for sure that could become one of our verticals, but we need to learn more about that.
I like that you're thinking of it as a clean slate for the future. What will the Mars economy be like? There are problems with our current economy. So, certainly I'm glad you're thinking about it. I'm glad you're doing it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
All right. On that topic, do you see a room here for essentially being able to secure space on the launch vehicle? Do you see that as another asset category on this platform?
Yeah, we have thought about that. We haven't included it yet because just my gut instinct is that there seems to be very few launch providers apart from SpaceX and NASA and Rocket Lab. Maybe in the future there'll be more providers, but I think the launch market is already a little bit saturated, or a little bit centralized in with SpaceX. And I don't know if the launch market needs a separate platform to book launches. I think that market has been quite well understood over the last few years.
Okay. Are there any other questions from anyone else on the call?
Crazy question. Where will your servers be located? Terrestrially?
When you say service, what do you mean exactly?
Sorry, your servers.
Oh, servers. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So the idea is that the servers will be located in space. So I actually study space law. So we've been doing some research on this, but that's a very, very tough question, and that's a new another rabbit hole to go down. But yeah, if you'd like to discuss that, then reach out, nick@spacemarkets.com, and we'd love to meet and talk about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
On the subject of the AI that's embedded into this, how embedded is it? Can the AI itself essentially run a trade all the way through, or does it require any human intervention for successful trade?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the moment, we've built if you like, the protocol and platform that allows AI agents to trade and use the platform. We haven't built the actual AI agents yet. We've made a little bit of progress on this. We've explored it. We've been like experimenting a little bit, but we've yet to actually finalize that. I imagine that very soon, in the next 6 months to a year, it will be fully AI enabled end to end. I don't see why AI could not operate this from the whole protocol. I think the challenge is, and this is one thing that some investors and some partners have flagged, is how do we actually verify the validity of the transaction from orbit to our platform. So yeah, once it goes on chain and once it goes onto our platform, it's you can monitor that and audit that. But how do you audit and monitor the actual flow from the satellite itself onto our platform? So that's one thing we're trying to solve.
Okay. All right. If there are no more questions from anyone else, we can go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank you again, Nick, for one, being part of Space Week, showing us this at Empire Space. I think I've seen this before, and I'm really very excited to see how this grows. If anyone has any more questions, please reach out to me. Evan is on the call, and Patrick, as well as Nick, if you have more questions on Space Market. We hope to see you all at the rest of Space Week if you're coming in person.
Great. Thanks, Quadri.
Evan.
Thanks for arranging the event. Thanks a lot. Cheers.